All right. Well, Cathy, thank you so much for coming all the way to Adelaide. It's so lovely to meet you in person.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And you've been a midwife for how long?
I did my midwifery training late in life. I started in 2001 actually.
Okay.
I qualified after many years as a general nurse.
And how many years? Oh, so you were a nurse first.
Yeah.
Yep. And how many years have you worked as a midwife?
I was a midwife for 13 years.
So you reached out because I have been sharing Lou Adsett's testimony, a midwife in Queensland, and her experiences of babies born alive and left to die in her hospital. And I can't remember how it happened, but you wrote a comment saying that you'd witnessed that firsthand, and so then I DM'd you, and here we are. And so it's not a great topic to be talking about, but I think it's something we have to talk about. And so I really want to thank you for your courage. You feel capable of talking about this because you're no longer a midwife. So
I'm retired.
You're retired as a midwife, so you're able to talk about it, I guess, without those implications for your career. But could you tell us your experiences of this issue?
The hospital that I worked in, we did undertake terminations of babies up to around about 22 weeks, which was usually the cut-off. We tended to use a drug we called Cervigen, which is the same as the one that they probably use in most places, where these babies were induced. The labour was induced by using the Cervigen. And
how does it work?
It's like a little tic tac. The nurse or the doctor places it up against the cervix. It releases prostaglandins, which then soften the cervix and start the labour process.
Okay, so this is a woman who is pregnant with a child pre-22 weeks, but she doesn't want to have the baby, so she's gone in for the abortion, and they give her Cervigen. To induce labour early. So it kind of lies to her body in thinking that she's going through labour.
Exactly.
Okay, and how long does it take?
It depends. Sometimes it can take 24 hours. Sometimes it's quicker. It just depends on
Does the woman stay in hospital typically?
Yes. Yeah. The Cervigen is placed every 3 hours until labour is established.
Okay.
Once labour is established, then the mother is given an epidural, pain relief, gas, whatever she needs to deal with the labour until the baby's born.
So she goes through labour and she's delivering a dead baby, but not always.
Ideally, it's a terrible word to say.
Yeah.
When you've got somebody coming into the hospital with a baby on board that's alive, you're inducing a baby that's alive.
Yeah.
The intention is for that baby to, it's going to sound awful, not survive the labour and the birth.
Yeah.
But they do survive the labour and the birth, and they are born alive.
Yeah. So that's how babies are born alive after these abortions.
Because so they're not botched abortions as such, it's the process. So the process is you're inducing a woman with a live baby on board, and if the baby survives labour and birth, it's born alive. So it's not technically a botched abortion, it's just the process.
Well, this is the abortion method, what you're saying, that the abortion method is to deliberately induce labour, hope that the child dies in the birth canal, but if they are born alive, it's sort of just that's just what happens.
You would deal with it,
Yeah, but did you know that that's illegal for cows? So calving induction was banned in 2022. The dairy industry took it upon itself in 2015 to phase out calving induction. So what would happen is these dairy cows, a method of kind of getting milk would be to do calving induction, have these little calves be born early and then left to die. But even with calves, when it was legal, they didn't think it was humane to leave these calves to die, so they would kill them through blunt force trauma, which of course is horrific, but I think that was even seen as a more empathetic, compassionate approach than leaving the calves to die. And there's all these articles about the trauma for the calf when they're separated from the mother straight after birth. And yet for babies, human babies, this is a method of abortion, live induction. Yeah,
that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
In some states, not all states.
So you are from New South Wales, where it has changed, and you referenced before about how abortion was available in your hospital up until 22 weeks. But obviously, since you retired, the law has now changed and it's available up until birth in New South Wales. And also, New South Wales does have that protection for babies who are born alive after an abortion, but that's not the case in Queensland or the Northern Territory or Tassie or WA or Victoria. You know, everywhere other than South Australia and New South Wales, babies are induced alive as a method of abortion and left to die. Can you tell me what happens to these babies?
Usually 9 times out of 10 the parents don't want to be involved. They don't want to have anything to do with the baby. So the baby is removed from the room and placed in what's the pan room. The door's shut, a sign put on the door saying do not enter, and the babies are left there until they're no longer gasping for breath.
Wow. So this is a little baby that's alive and moving, wriggling?
Yeah, gasping for breath, fighting for life. The innate drive to live is very strong, even in babies that are deemed to have medical or genetic conditions that would predetermine that they may not be compatible with life. That's another term that I find very difficult to comprehend because we don't know everything. We are not, with the advent of ultrasounds and techniques to study pregnancy and study babies, mistakes get made. I can tell you about a mistake that got made in our hospital for a 35-weeker that was born. That it was a simple case of the sonographer that did the ultrasound ticked the wrong box and said that the ultrasound report came up and said no fetal heart detected. This baby had a cardiac condition and needed to be born in a tertiary hospital. So I'm not clear on how she got to our hospital, but labour was induced and that baby was alive.
Yeah, wow.
They had to race it up to the nursery and then ship it out because it was at 35 weeks and that baby, mistakes are made all the time.
So was that an abortion at 35 weeks?
Because they thought the baby had passed. So the formal ultrasound report was inaccurate and came through as having, it actually said no fetal.
So they thought this baby had died.
Yeah.
And then they induced labour thinking that the mother would deliver a dead baby at 35 weeks, but the baby came out alive.
Yep.
And so they did rush the baby up to the NICU.
Oh, that baby got care. But it just, in my mind, that just demonstrates that we don't know everything. We don't have, while we've got great testing, etc., I think a lot of the times too, we're too quick to just say, okay, this baby's not perfect, let's get rid of it and try again.
I've had so many women, since I've been speaking out on Instagram and social media, reach out with this exact same story of they were told that their baby wouldn't survive or their baby would have this condition or that condition, and the baby has come out fine, or even when the baby has come out with some kind of disability, the mothers tell me they're so glad to have had these babies.
Exactly,
So it is horrific. If we could just go back to the little babies who are born alive after their abortion, typically pre-22 weeks. So you said they get put in the empty room, a sign on the door that says,
do not enter.
Do not enter. And what are they placed on?
Usually in a kidney dish, like a little metal or plastic kidney dish, on a trolley with a cover over the top of them.
Over the baby's face?
Yeah. Covered them completely. So if somebody does open the door, then they're not hit with this horror story.
Wow.
And they're left there until no signs of life are determined.
Is someone with them the whole time?
No, not on their own. There's no one in there with them. Just in a dirty pan room with the door shut and a sign saying do not enter.
Oh my goodness.
Until such time as someone goes in there and determines that there's no sign of life.
Wow. And so do you know how long those babies survive for?
Sometimes a few minutes, sometimes several hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is there ever have you spoken to midwives? Because you didn't participate in the abortions, did you?
I prefer not to. I'll look after the women, but it's just not something that I want to do as a midwife. I didn't become a midwife to terminate life.
Yeah.
I became a midwife to bring life into the world. That was me.
Yeah.
And I've talked to friends at work, and I said to one girl, "How do you do it?" And she said, "What do you mean?" And I said, how do you do what you're doing? She goes, "Cathy, I don't understand what you're saying." And I said, "You're stopping a beating heart." And she said to me, "I have never, ever thought of it like that." Yeah. People that are actually involved in this process I don't know what they think. That conversation floored me, because I thought, wow, that's all I can think of is you are stopping a beating heart.
Yeah.
But they just...
And then when you're not stopping a beating heart, you're actually delivering a live baby, and then...
waiting for that heart to stop.
Waiting for that heart to stop, and just completely discarding that baby. Yeah. I mean, you've cared in your practice as a midwife for really premature babies that weren't going to survive. Mm-hmm. Could you tell us about what those babies are like? Can they experience pain?
Oh, absolutely. From 4 months, from 16 weeks in utero, they can hear your voice. Yeah. They know your voice. They can hear, they're moving, they've got all... They're a baby. They're a normal... They're a person. Yeah. There's nothing that they possess that you or I don't. Yeah.
Do you feel like there isn't much choice for midwives and doctors who don't want to do this?
Look, I was very blessed in that people that I worked with knew that if there was a heartbeat, I would care for the mother, I would look after her, I would treat her with dignity and respect, and I would do everything I could to alleviate her pain and manage her labour to the best of my ability. But I would not be the person that started or kept the process going. Yeah. That's just my beliefs.
Yeah. You didn't want to kill. You didn't become a midwife to kill.
I didn't become a midwife to become an abortionist. I became a midwife to bring life into the world. It's not something that I even considered when I was doing my midwifery. The thought that I would be... I mean, when I was working in general nursing, if I worked in theatre recovery, sometimes an early pregnancy is terminated. We were able to opt out of being involved in that. And maybe I was naive, but I never thought for 1 minute going to working in birthing unit would subject me to that process, and just how it would affect me personally. It's not why I went into midwifery. I went into midwifery to bring life into the world, because it's usually it's not always happy, but most of the time it's happy. Your patients are usually well, and everyone's glad to welcome this baby into the world.
Yeah, okay. And so what happens to these babies that are left in the is it the dirty pan room? Yeah. What happens to them after they die?
They are put into a plastic container with formalin, which is 70% alcohol. They're sent off to pathology, anatomical pathology usually, sometimes they get a postmortem, sometimes they don't. After 20 weeks, they've got to be issued with a birth certificate and a death certificate. And the expectation from the state is that after 20 weeks that they will be given a funeral. If they don't get a funeral, then they're sent to a funeral home and cremated.
But before 20 weeks?
Before 20 weeks, those babies go into the medical waste. Wow. They might go to pathology, and then they sometimes go to pathology to make sure that, they call them the products of conception, is complete, meaning have we got all the bits. Wow. And when that's determined, then they just go into medical waste. And there's no compulsion on the parents to have any kind of death certificate or birth certificate or funeral or even any acknowledgement of that child's life.
Wow. So the thousands of abortions that happen between 13 and 20 weeks, the method is induction. It's to deliver these babies, hope that they die, but if they live, they get dumped in a dirty pan room, left on a kidney dish for sometimes hours, and then they're put in a plastic container and deemed sent to pathology. Then that box is ticked. They're deemed medical waste and they're put in the bin.
Basically, yeah.
How can we do that to babies?
I don't know. I can't.
But how do people...
I don't know.
How do midwives and doctors, people that went into this profession to restore health, how do they walk around that hospital knowing that happens?
When people say that it's healthcare, it's not healthcare. It's not healthcare because a baby in utero is a living human being with potential. It's not a potential human being, it's a human being with potential at a stage of life where it needs to be where it is. Then there's the other argument of the later term abortions where the mother's life is in jeopardy, the pregnancy needs to be terminated with a stillborn baby. That's ridiculous. Yeah. You can induce labour and deliver a live baby. You don't have to kill the baby because the mother is mentally or medically unfit. In my mind, we need to look at the reasons why women feel they have no other option and try and help them navigate through that. And we also need to encourage adoption. That's something that doesn't happen very often. Yeah. And there are people out there desperate to be a parent for any, at any cost, and we're disposing of babies like they're garbage.
Yeah, wow.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is heartbreaking. Is there anything else that you want to share with people?
I just think it's too easy to say this is going to be too hard, let's just get rid of it. The mental toll that takes on a woman is different to a man, because as soon as you know you're pregnant, whether you want that baby or not, you're aware that baby is a baby. You can call it a clump of cells all you like, but in your heart you know that that's your flesh and blood. Reach out, get help, ask for some support. We need, as a community, to come around these families and give them other options apart from just get rid of it. It's too easy just to get rid of it and then fix the mum later on down the track when she's having a nervous breakdown.
Because of her abortion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it affects people mentally for decades, probably for the rest of their life.
Cathy, do the mothers get told that the baby could be born alive as a result of that abortion?
Yeah, I told them.
And what would they say?
One in particular, I said to her, can you hold your baby in your arms while he dies? And she said, yes, I can do that. She would rather do. She was one that I offered to adopt. She said, I can hold my baby in my arms while he dies in my arms, and she did. Yeah.
So that was one of the babies that didn't get dumped in the dirty pan room.
Yeah, that one stayed with his mum until he passed.
Yeah, wow. But if the mother doesn't want to do that, the baby gets dumped.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what about the midwives? Did you ever have situations where midwives would be really emotional about these live births following abortions?
A lot of them won't talk about it because it's very painful.
Yeah.
A lot of them tend to avoid talking about it because it affects them as well. And when you're busy, you've got other things happening, phones ringing, doctors coming, visitors, you've got to understand how busy the place gets. You don't really get a chance to debrief. There's no assistance given to the staff that are involved in these procedures, so they probably need counselling as well. Yeah. Because it's hard. It's awful.
Yeah, I just can't imagine it, being a midwife and delivering a child and then holding that child and then dumping that child and covering the child with a cloth. I just actually can't get my head around how anybody does that.
The saddest part is you go into one room where there's a baby that's wanted and there's monitors going, there's drips, there's life, there's activity. Then you go into a room where the pregnancy's being terminated, and it's dead quiet. There's no noise. There's no monitor to look at, no fetal hearts to listen to, because no one cares if there's a fetal heart rate or not.
Yeah.
And that's basically, what are you going to do? The room is just
so quiet until that baby's born, and you know, the emotions kick in, and the sound of the mother's when their babies died, the ones that want their babies, it's heartbreaking. It rips into your heart. But the ones that they're not wanted, I don't think that. I think it's easy to say something, but it's very hard to do something. Yeah. So it's easy to say, yeah, just go and have an abortion and, you know, get on with your life. Comes off the tongue pretty easily. But the actual physical doing that, it's not easy. Yeah. It's not easy. And like I say, as a community, as human beings, we need to come around these families and support them better than we do.
Yeah. Do these babies cry when they come out?
They try.
Yeah.
Because they're very, very immature. They gasp and they make a noise that you could say was crying, but they don't cry like a typical baby.
Yeah. And what's it like watching a baby?
Oh, it's awful.
Yeah.
You can see it struggling for life, and your hands are tied. You can't do anything. You can't do anything. You just have to stand there and watch it. I used to I'd get a warm blanket and wrap the baby in a warm blanket, so at least that way, a small gesture of comfort for the baby, and yeah, that's all you can do. Give it a warm blanket and wait.
Wow. It's really traumatising.
For everybody.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
Didn't want to get upset, but yeah. For everybody concerned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever get nightmares about it? Or?
I used to come home and cry. I'd come home often and cry. My husband would tell you that. He could always tell when I had a bad day. I'd go and sit at the back and cry. Yeah.
Yeah, because you'd be thinking about these babies.
Yeah. Because it affects us too. We're human beings as well. It affects us as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's not an easy thing to do, and when you're doing it often and regularly, you know, it's not fun.
Yeah.
It's not part of what I wanted to do as a midwife. It never has, never was, never will be. I would never. I couldn't do it. I couldn't live with myself.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing this with us.
That's okay.
Really, no, it's okay. Look, I think you'd have to have a heart of stone not to be tearing up at this, because it is just really horrific. I've just been having a lot of these conversations with midwives, actually, since Louise came forward. So many midwives have been calling me to tell me their stories, but they're working in the system and
they can't.
They can't talk about
I
it.
don't have a job to protect, and I don't have a registration to protect, so I can speak quite freely.
Yeah. So I want to thank you, because you're speaking up for all the women that have contacted me who can't speak, and you've done that today. So thank you for your courage and your bravery.
I just wish we could do something better. We just need to be better as a community, as human beings, and treat these children with the dignity that they deserve.
Yeah, and help their mums to see there's another way.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.